Sorry. There we go. Hi, all. So, for those of y'all that aren't familiar with me, I am Jennifer. I'm the membership chair for BHN. And, the resource professionals are really the heart of the office hours. They come and they present a little bit, answer questions, things like that. So, I am going to turn it over pretty quickly to Sydney. She is our substance use resource professional. So, Sydney, go ahead. I'm going to probably mute because she can be kind of loud and I'll jump in and out. Okay.
Sounds great. Cool. Hi everyone. It's nice to be here with you. As as was said, my name's Sydney. I'm coming to you from Boulder, Colorado, where I have a private practice and see clients who are in recovery from substance use, but also I specialize in the intersection of eating disorders and substance use. Um, And I just want to say right off the top, you might hear my dog barking. And I also want to invite you that if you're able to turn your camera on, I love to feel like I'm not speaking into the void. And, we're a small group, which is exciting because my hope for this office hours, instead of me just talking at you, that hopefully we can get a discussion going and maybe question and answer and yeah, make it a little bit more lively and fun. So if you're able to engage, please do so. Feel free to drop questions in the chat as I go along or just kind of raise your hand. Again, we're a small group, so we can make it casual. Um, and I'm excited to be talking about sugar and caffeine as it relates to nutrition for substance use disorders. Um, okay, all good, Rebecca. Well, feel free. You can chat me if you would like. Um, and years ago, I ran the nutrition department at a pretty bougie treatment center in Brooklyn, New York. It no longer exists. No one wanted to really spend a ton of money to be doing treatment in Brooklyn next to a liquor store. But, as the one and only dietitian there, this treatment center really started off as a place where they really wanted to quote unquote use food as part of the recovery process. And then at the end of the day, they kind of just fell to the whims of the client's requests. And to the detriment of the treatment there, I believe. And so we're going to talk about sugar and caffeine today. I'm going to hopefully get you to think about it, maybe in a different way. Um, and yeah, so we need to talk about sugar. And when I'm talking about sugar with clients, I'm really referring to added sugars and sugar that's found in ultra processed food. Sometimes clients can be very black and white. Oh, and I should have said at the top too. I also have lived experience. I'm in recovery from substance use and also an eating disorder. And, sometimes people can fall into extremes in this population. We are a group of people that are prone to extreme thinking and rigidity, impulse. We know that. And oftentimes, when people think of sugar, they take it beyond just the packaged sugar items. They'll expand it to fruit, um, to different sorts of carbohydrates. And for the purpose of this conversation, I want to just focus on ultra processed foods, so things that are found in a package, um, things that are frequently found in treatment centers like Oreos, Chips Ahoy, Rice Krispie treats, jelly beans. I mean, really the gamut. And I think here goes Charlie. I'm sorry about that. But when it comes to sugar, there's many different opinions. One treatment center, I live in Boulder, Colorado. There's a treatment center not too far from here, an addiction treatment center where they don't have any sugar, they don't have any caffeine, there's no tobacco on campus, because these substances can light up areas of the brain that are akin to drugs and alcohol, right? And so that might work for some people, and for other people, that doesn't work because they're going to come home from treatment and they're probably not going to live in a setting that is free or abstinent from these substances. And so there's tons of opinions when it comes to, let's just focus on sugar. Should we include it? Should we not include it? If anybody in here is familiar with 12-step world, there's a book called Living Sober. And in that book, it says something along the lines of like, why not eat a chocolate cake? At least you're not drinking. And sure, that can be true for some people. And for other people, we know that we have addiction transfers. So someone could put down the alcohol and substances and pick up something like food. And so I'm not here to say yes, sugar or no sugar. I'm really here to advocate for personalized care and individualized nutrition care for these clients. And to really consider if you're working in an addiction treatment setting, are you doing an eating disorder screen? Are you screening for eating disorders? Are you asking clients about, sure, their food history, but also food trauma? So, to give you some examples, did they grow up with any food insecurity? Did they grow up in a home where one parent was dieting, or some members of the family were allowed to eat some foods and other members of the family were not allowed to eat some foods? Um, and so we really need to be getting to know each client on an individual level to see what is most appropriate for them. For some clients, and I work with eating disorders. I do believe in many of the different models that exist, intuitive eating, all foods fit. And at the end of the day, for some individuals, they may need to avoid added sugars. In my practice, that's something that I don't really tend to go towards right off the bat. But if a client is saying that that's what they need and that helps them stay on a path to recovery and helps them feel calm and grounded, why am I going to try and force an agenda of getting them to try to eat certain foods that they don't want to eat? Um, for some clients, we might need to liberalize sugar foods, especially if they're coming in with a dual diagnosis of an eating disorder. But for most clients, it's going to be some form of moderation and exploring what that looks like for each individual. Um, if I go back, this is a slide deck that I'm doing at a conference later this month. But we all know this, right? When we think about blood sugar and the blood sugar roller coaster, when we've eaten food, for this, a spike, maybe it's a more carbohydrate-rich food. Charlie's like, yeah, we feel energized, we feel good, we might feel more satisfied, we might feel calm or relief. And then, of course, when that energy crash comes, we can feel nervous, anxious, tired, irritable, hard to focus, shaky, sweaty. And these moods are very akin to when somebody is using their preferred substance, right? You use the substance, we might feel calm, we might feel relief, we might feel satisfied, feel good. And then in the withdrawal of that substance, we can feel nervous, anxious, tired, irritable, shaky, sweaty. And sugar is a substance, right? It can lead to the same feelings and sensations. Um, so just from a blood sugar standpoint, one thing to consider when we think about sugar and added sugars, whether it's in a treatment facility or outpatient, I recommend providing education around blood sugar, how it works, how blood sugar variations can lead to cravings. And sometimes clients look at me like, what? What does food have to do with me craving? There's an acronym in kind of 12-step worlds called HALT, if you've heard of it. Stands for hungry, angry, lonely, tired. And asking yourself, um, people in 12 step will often say, are you in halt right now? Are you hungry? Are you angry? Are you lonely? Are you tired? Right? And even if you're not in 12 step or you're just a human, I know that when I get hangry, I am like, I need food right now. Get away from me. I need a warm, cozy blanket. Wrap me up on the couch, right? And if we're not in recovery or we're in early recovery, it can be if we feel hangry. Oh, I need something to feel better. And food isn't always top of mind. I'm gonna check the yes. HALT is a great tool. So educating clients on blood sugar, how it functions, and then that can be an opening to speaking about sugar. Okay, for breakfast, instead of having just a donut, could we have a donut with a side of eggs and explaining why? And for some clients, that's totally cool, right? For other clients, they're like, no, if I eat that donut in the morning, I'm then going to have a muffin and then candy, and it's going to be lights out. And the way that I really approach sugar with clients is what's the level of suffering they're experiencing? And if somebody feels a ton of suffering because they eat a donut and it's a gateway, why am I going to really try to push any sort of agenda on mindfulness if they're not interested in it, right? It's enough to be in recovery from a substance alone. So I think we really need to meet clients where they're at. This balanced plate. Um, and I think that we can use the model of caffeine and medication protocols in a similar way for sugar, specifically thinking about treatment centers. So, most treatment centers have some sort of protocol or boundary around caffeine. I've never been in a treatment center where there's coffee available 24/7. For the most part, coffee, in my experience, usually stops around 12 or 1, right? We know caffeine has a half-life. There's varying data points out there. I usually go with a half-life of around 8 hours. So even if somebody isn't feeling super jittery 6 hours after a cup of coffee, we know that there still could be caffeine circulating in their blood system. So again, what if there was a similar protocol as caffeine to sugar? And instead of at afternoon snack in the dining hall having a variety of ultra processed snacks available, what if around 3 p.m. the things that were available were fruits and nuts and coming off a long day of counseling clients, so my brain is fried on the healthy snack ideas, but I think you all can use your imaginations, right? And not having the Chips Ahoy or Oreos or things that can really light up people's brains at 3 p.m. And we know that sugar can have an effect on sleep as well, right? Much of the caffeine cutoff is, at least in the center where I worked, is we really wanted people to prioritize their sleep. And so we cut off the caffeine. We did have decaf coffee and tea available later in the day. But same thing with sugar. If we really want to prioritize sleep and getting people to calm their nervous systems, then we should be treating sugar similarly to caffeine and medication. And of course, in a treatment center, there's very strict medication protocols, right? So why not think of sugar in the same realm? It is a substance, it is mood altering, and I think it can be helpful in a treatment scenario to have some sort of protocol around it. In an outpatient setting, caffeine and sugar, again, this isn't like the sexiest recommendation, but should be discussed on an individual level. Um, some clients can fall asleep after having 4 cups of coffee and 2 Red Bulls, and they can fall asleep and their appetite isn't affected, and it is totally fine for them. For other clients, we might need to point out, hey, I noticed that your appetite is significantly impacted and you're consuming a significant amount of caffeine. Giving some nutrition education around how caffeine can blunt appetite, can be really helpful for folks. So if you don't ask about caffeine on your assessment intake paperwork, that can be useful. I have a question on my intake form. Do you use any of the following? And examples of the following are energy drinks, coffee, tea, like 5-hour energy shots, cannabis, amphetamines, painkillers, artificial sweeteners. I ask in that way instead of just saying, how many times a day do you drink X, right? I mean, I just know myself as someone in recovery, I was always lying on intake paperwork. But when we say, how often, like, do you use any of the following with a check mark? And all of these things are mixed in, it's a little bit more friendly. Um, because the overall goal when it comes to caffeine and sugar or just food in general for this population is helping them find stability, right? Helping them find groundedness, and just a bigger and more beautiful life. So, yeah, I don't have any hard or fast rules around sugar and caffeine, and I intentionally didn't come at you with, the research studies that are out there that showed rats can get as addicted to sugar as cocaine, because at the end of the day, the research is interesting. And also, we're talking to people. And as you all know, I love speaking to dietitians because we get it. Food is so personalized and comes with so much energy and baggage around it that to have any one sort of belief, especially around something like sugar and caffeine, but really sugar, just doesn't really serve our clients. When I have tried to approach clients of like, no sugar, let's really focus on health. They're like, bro, I'm just trying to get sober. I don't care about that stuff. Right. So, really letting the client lead, being client centered, is how I think we serve our clients the best. Um, and has to be one-on-one care for this. Yes, Tamara. Okay, so Rebecca asked a good question in the chat. She said, can you please delve more into how caffeine blunts appetite? I haven't heard much about that, like as in GI side effects of coffee. Um, so most people, when they consume caffeine, it elevates your heart rate. It can just activate the nervous system in a way that we're no longer kind of hearing our hunger cues. Um, Also, caffeine is a stimulant, it's an upper, right? It also works on the nervous system cells within the GI tract. And so, 1 cup of coffee might be fine for someone unless they're super sensitive. But oftentimes, high intake of caffeine decreases somebody's appetite. Uh, Akin to cocaine or other stimulants or Adderall, it can just block the appetite for people. Then you take this population where also a lot of folks in recovery are using nicotine in some way, whether smoking or vaping, and the two can really just cause one's appetite to plummet, die off. If someone has a more eloquent way of explaining that, please jump in.
No, I think that sounded great. The other thing that I see happen sometimes is I can't remember the name of the medication, the decongestant medication that's in Claritin D. That medication in conjunction with caffeine is often used for that reason to like really blunt that appetite. So that might be something to look at, like when she was talking about that concurrence between substance use and eating disorders. That's a real good, I say good, but yeah, one of those eating disorder ways to blunt an appetite
Effective.
is mixing caffeine in that drug.
It's effective. Yeah. So you'll notice, I mean, if you haven't had much experience with eating disorders, many clients that have anorexia or restrict, they will consume copious amounts of caffeine throughout the day because it can blunt your appetite. That mixed with lots of water then fills you up and theoretically don't have to eat food. Yeah. Um, I'll also talk about with clients, Rebecca, who maybe are in treatment or in recovery from stimulant use. Again, these clients tend to really go for caffeine and will also frequently pair nicotine with it as well. And I'll talk about how it can sometimes affect taste buds also. So, something to consider. So I kept it short today. Um, and yeah, I'd love to hear from all of you, maybe specific questions, or if you work in a specific treatment setting, um, if you have a case that you want to talk about, I'm
Sure.
open to that.
Usually before anybody gets going, we usually cut off the recording so everybody feels comfortable. Are you at a spot that you're ready to do that? Okay.
Mhm.
Let me, dang it, every time I pull up this chat, it hides the record button.